Have you ever felt the sting of a subtle comment? A phrase that echoed longer than it should? A look, a tone, a sentence wrapped in ambiguity but laced with something undeniable? Don't ignore it. That's what the headline screams. If she says this, she's cheating with someone you know. It hooks your fear, sharpens your suspicion, and ignites the inner fire of betrayal. But what if the fire isn't what we should trust? Welcome to Chill, Then Conquer, a space where ancient philosophy meets modern emotion. Today, we won't feed the fire. We'll learn to observe it without getting burned. Because the Stoics taught us something radical, that no phrase, no betrayal, and no storm in the world has the power to shake us unless we give it permission. Let's begin. Part 1. The Illusion of Certainty. If she says this, what does that even mean? We hear one sentence and suddenly we believe we know the whole story. We build cathedrals of assumption on the foundation of a whisper. But the Stoics remind us, you don't control events, only your judgment of them. Epictetus said, it is not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. So when you hear a cryptic phrase, a half-truth or a shift in tone, your mind rushes forward. She's cheating. It's someone I know. I must react. I must punish. I must protect myself. But ask yourself, is it the phrase that harms me, or my belief about what it means? Marcus Aurelius, emperor, warrior, philosopher, kept a journal, never intended for anyone but himself. In it, he wrote, "If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment." The modern world loves certainty. Viral headlines scream, "Don't ignore it." But the Stoics seek something deeper. Not certainty, but clarity. Not accusation, but composure. What if your reaction isn't truth, but trauma? Part 2. The fire within isn't always wisdom. The first response to betrayal is emotional. Anger, shock, grief, suspicion. But anger is a poor compass. Seneca wrote, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." Pause. Imagine your mind as a battlefield, and every assumption is a soldier charging without orders. The Stoic doesn't surrender the city to the mob. He guards the gate. What is truly under your control in this moment? You cannot control her words. You cannot control the past. You cannot even control whether your fears are valid. But you can control your response. You can choose not to fuel the fire. Epictetus said, "When you are offended at any man's fault, turn to yourself and study your own failings. Then you will forget your anger." Why? Because in turning inward, we reclaim power. Part 3. Betrayal is real, but so is self-respect. This isn't about pretending betrayal doesn't exist. It does. It cuts deeply. And often it comes from those closest to us. The Stoics never denied pain. They simply refused to become slaves to it. So what do you do when betrayal whispers in your ear? You don't scream, you don't beg, you don't demand explanations that won't satisfy you. You return to your principles. Let your first thought be, "This is not unbearable." Marcus Aurelius. There is strength in stillness. There is power in not reacting. There is a dignity in choosing silence over spectacle. And most of all, there is healing in remaining whole while others shatter. Part 4. Your response is your signature. When someone lies, cheats, or breaks trust, they are revealing their character, not yours. Your reaction becomes your mark on the world. And the Stoic asks, what kind of mark do you want to leave? Do you want to be the person who lost their center, or the one who reclaimed it? Seneca. No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. This is your proving ground. Yes, maybe she cheated. Yes, maybe it was someone you trusted. But even here, especially here, you remain free. Free to act, not react. Free to walk away without shouting. Free to build again, stronger and cleaner. Part 5. The Inner Citadel Revisited. Remember the Stoic concept of the inner citadel, the unshakable fortress within your soul. No betrayal can breach it unless you open the gates. You've been hurt, that's real, but you are still whole. You are not the betrayal. You are not the phrase. You are not the suspicion. You are the observer. You are the one who watches, understands, and chooses. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius. The world says, don't ignore this. The Stoic replies, don't ignore your reason, your peace, your path. Part 6. Let her speak. Let her go. Let yourself rise. Whatever she said, let it echo into silence. Let the storm pass over you like wind over stone. In the quiet that remains, you will still be here, still centered, still unbroken. Because you didn't need to explain your worth. You didn't need to chase closure. You simply needed to stay true to yourself. Self-control is strength. Calmness is mastery. You must stay calm. Marcus Aurelius. Is it harder to face betrayal or to choose not to let it define you? The Stoic knows the answer.
The harder path is the higher one, and the one worth walking.
Stay the course, hold the line, and remember, even in heartbreak, you are free. And so, in the face of betrayal, judgment, misunderstanding, or manipulation, the Stoic does not waver. He does not rise to defend every false charge. He does not correct every flawed perception. He stands, not because he cannot speak, but because he knows the futility of explaining oneself to ears that will not hear. Seneca once wrote, "If you are wise, mingle with those who can make you better. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve. The process is mutual. Men learn as they teach." But he never said you must explain your path to those who scoff at your direction. He never encouraged shouting into the void of ego and pride. The silent resolve is not muteness. It is a language older than speech. It is restraint, yes, but not weakness. It is the decision to stand like a mountain while the winds scream around you. To remain rooted while others flail in storms they created. Epictetus taught that it is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. And the most radical reaction in a noisy world is silence, stillness, composure. This is the silent sword. You don't wield it to wound. You carry it because you no longer fight the battles that do not lead to peace. You see, people often demand explanations not to understand you, but to control the narrative. They press you for answers so they can reframe your story to their liking. But the Stoic refuses to trade the truth of his soul for the comfort of being light. Your discipline must become so inwardly anchored that not even the lies of those close to you can shake it. Not even the accusations of those who once claimed to love you can destabilize your course. The world tells you, speak, justify, argue, defend. The Stoic answers, watch me live. Let your silence be like the sea, deep, unfathomable, filled with unseen strength. Let others throw stones into it. They will ripple briefly, then vanish. But the sea remains. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake in any thought or action, I shall gladly change. I seek the truth, which never harmed anyone." The harm is to persist in one's self-deception and ignorance. This is the only reason to break your silence, to grow, not to please, not to convince, not to justify your heart to those committed to misunderstanding it. Let go of the urge to explain your every move. Release yourself from the burden of being understood by everyone. It is a form of freedom that the unwise cannot comprehend. In the arena of wisdom, presence is your proof. not paragraphs. Stillness becomes a fortress. Composure becomes your cloak. And your actions? They speak in volumes no words ever could. The power of silent resolve. Have you ever considered the strength it takes to remain silent? Not in defeat, but in mastery. To hold back words not because you are weak, but because you are beyond the need to defend, to explain, to retaliate. This is the heart of silent resolve. It is not suppression, it is selection. It is not fear, it is force, directed inward. The Stoics knew, silence is not the absence of action. It is the presence of control. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." Notice the elegance in his response. Not vengeance, not reaction, but inner transformation. Silent resolve is the act of standing firm like an ancient stone, unmoved by the storms of insult, betrayal, or misunderstanding. It is to let the waves crash against you and still remain. In the philosophy of Epictetus, we find this instruction. If someone does wrong, it is because they are mistaken about what is good. He doesn't say fight them. He doesn't say correct them. He says understand them. And from that understanding comes a higher power, the refusal to react on the same level. That is the foundation of resolve. A person who has mastered silent resolve is not cold or passive. They are attentive, aware, and calculating. They have learned to respond instead of react, to hold the emotional line in moments where most people collapse under the weight of their impulses. This kind of control is not natural. It is trained. It is forged. It is born from daily resistance to the temptation of reaction. It's walking away from an argument not because you lost it, but because you see the battlefield from above. It's choosing not to respond to gossip because your self-worth doesn't hang on the opinions of others. Seneca warned us, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." What greater adversity is there than emotional injustice, when someone misjudges you, betrays you, insults you without cause? Yet in these moments lies your chance to rise, to resolve, silently not to stoop, to hold your ground, not with shouting, but with sovereignty, to say nothing, and in doing so, say everything. A Stoic does not need the world to recognize their virtue. They know their worth is internal. They are citizens of the Inner Citadel, and what happens outside cannot breach the walls unless they open the gates. This is the strategy of silence. This is the weapon of restraint. Let us turn now to practice, training the will through stillness. Every day you are offered hundreds of invitations to speak, to defend, to strike back, to correct a misperception, to explain your past. Decline most of them. Instead, ask yourself, will this bring me closer to peace? Will this clarify anything truly meaningful? Will this elevate my soul or merely feed the fire of ego? If the answer is no, return to silence. The Stoics practiced this as a form of discipline. They did not speak to be heard, they spoke to serve truth. And when truth required no defense, they held their tongue. They became observers of other storms, but students only of their own reactions. You can do the same. When tempted to react, do nothing for 5 seconds. Count backward. Remind yourself that silence is an action, not inaction. You are choosing the higher path. If you are misunderstood, let it be. If you are doubted, prove nothing. If you are accused, observe. In doing so, you shift the power. No one owns your peace unless you give it away. No one can rattle your inner stillness unless you offer them the key. The voice inside the quiet. There is a voice louder than anger, more powerful than argument. It is the quiet confidence that says, "I know who I am." This voice grows in silence. It is cultivated through restraint. It echoes only for those strong enough to listen. In ancient times, generals knew that the strongest walls were not always those guarded by armies, but those guarded by silence. Why? Because silence could not be manipulated. It could not be tricked. It could not be used against itself. This is the ultimate Stoic defense. Not silence as weakness, but silence as superiority. When someone expects you to respond emotionally and you don't, you break the cycle. You disarm the battle. You become untouchable. As Aurelius said, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Fill your mind with patience, and your actions will mirror strength. Fill it with the need for revenge, and your peace becomes hostage. The Stoic path is not about repressing emotion. It's about ruling it. You may feel the wave rise inside you, anger, indignation, the desire to scream your side of the story. But do not suppress it. Observe it, greet it, and let it pass like a storm that cannot breach the mountain. This is the mountain you are building, word by word, silence by silence. The final word is no word. When others provoke, your strength is in non-reaction. When others mock, your strength is in serenity. When others expect collapse, your strength is in standing tall, unshaken, unbothered. You don't need to explain your path to those who don't walk it. You don't need to justify your vision to those too blind to see it. You don't need to defend your decisions when they are rooted in principle, not popularity. This is the Stoic creed. Your life is your defense. Your discipline is your shield. Your silence is your sword. Hold the line. Let your actions speak where your words no longer need to. Let your calm become the loudest noise in the room, and let your silence be the thunder that shakes every shallow accusation to its knees. Let this be the transition. If you've made it this far, then you already feel the weight of this power. Not the kind that dominates others, but the kind that governs the self. The next step on our Stoic journey will take this foundation and push it even further. We will explore not only silence as a response, but the life that flows from that silence. Prepare yourself. The life that flows from that silence. Have you ever noticed that the loudest people often live the most unsettled lives? That the ones constantly speaking are rarely listening to others or themselves? Now consider this question. What if the greatest strength is found in what you don't say? We've talked about betrayal, about the sting of someone close turning against you, about the words spoken behind your back, and about the false smiles that hide knives. But now we turn away from the noise and step into the silence. Because after the storm, there's something else. Not rage, not revenge, but a strange, quiet clarity. This is where life begins again. This is the life that flows from that silence. Part 1. The sacred space after betrayal. After a betrayal, silence is not merely the absence of words. It is a decision, a revolt against chaos. It is the refusal to let pain echo. Seneca wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." So what color do you let it absorb when you keep repeating the betrayal in your mind? What shape do your days take when every conversation is haunted by old wounds? True silence isn't suppression, it's transformation. In that stillness, something begins to form. A self no longer reactive, a self no longer explained, a self no longer begging to be understood. That's the first sign of power. Part 2. What flourishes in the quiet. The Stoics taught that logos, reason, divine order, can only be heard when all else is quiet. Marcus Aurelius sat each morning with his thoughts. No war council, no noise, no defense, just the page and the mind. Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul. In the quiet that follows betrayal, we meet ourselves without mask. The shame fades, the pride dissolves, and what remains is raw, essential. What do you learn when no one else is speaking? You learn that not everything needs to be said, that not every truth needs to be shared to be real, that the deepest growth happens beneath the surface, unannounced. A tree does not shout when it begins to bear fruit. Part 3. The discipline of saying nothing. But this silence is not easy. It is not passive. It's a discipline. A daily practice in not responding to the temptation to defend yourself. People will wonder. They'll ask why you're so quiet, why you're not fighting back, why you're not telling your side of the story. Let them wonder. Because when you've found peace in your silence, their noise becomes irrelevant. Epictetus said, "Keep silence for the most part, and speak only when you must." Not because you have nothing to say, but because what you would say no longer adds anything meaningful. You've outgrown the argument. You've surpassed the need to be right. And in doing so, you begin to live with a strange kind of elegance, an elegance born of self-possession. Part 4. The emergence of a new self. From this silence, something new flows. Not bitterness, not paranoia, but clarity. You begin to act without explaining, to love without performing, to walk away without needing applause. You begin to live not in reaction to betrayal, but in alignment with something deeper. This is the life that flows from that silence, a life built not on words but on being. You show up differently, more calm, more intentional, less tangled in the judgments of others. And suddenly, you're not chasing closure. You are the closure. Not because you've solved the mystery, but because you've stopped needing to solve it. Part 5. The quiet power they'll never understand. To the world, your silence might look like weakness. Let them believe that. Because in time, they'll feel it. In your gaze that no longer flickers. In your calm that cannot be disturbed. In your presence that speaks louder than explanation. Socrates was accused. He was misunderstood. He stood trial, and he spoke when needed, briefly, with calm. But mostly, he let his life be the proof. He refused to betray the silence he had cultivated. "I know that I know nothing," he said, and yet he lived with a certainty most never touch. So when she lies, when he betrays, when your friends falter, don't rush to expose them. Expose your inner citadel instead. Return to your sacred silence. Let the noise scream. You don't have to. Because life flows from what you no longer react to. Part 6. The final gift of silence. From that silence comes focus, peace, a new way of choosing, a new way of walking through the world. You see through people faster, you speak slower, you listen better. You guard your time, and most importantly, you no longer feel the need to defend what you already know is true. You are no longer proving, you are simply being. This is the reward of embracing silence as the answer. The life that flows from that silence is not dramatic. It is powerful in its stillness, a kind of grace that no storm can shake. If you've followed the silence this far, it's because there's something in you that already knows this truth. You don't need to shout to be strong. You don't need to explain to be valid. You don't need to prove to be at peace. Let your quiet speak for you. If this voice resonated, don't forget to like the video. It tells us you walk this path too. What if the pain you're feeling right now is the last time it will ever have power over you? You've walked with us through suspicion, betrayal, silent resolve, and the stories of the ancients. But now comes the moment every Stoic prepares for, the moment of the final choice. We don't control what others do, not their lies, not their loyalty, not their love. But we do control how long we let it live in us. We control how long we hold the fire after it has burned us. We control how long we rehearse the betrayal like a play we hate, but still memorize. We control whether we make our identity the wound or the wisdom that came after. You've heard the signs. You've heard the whispers that hinted she's not just drifting away, but perhaps towards someone you know. You've studied your reactions, learned to face the storm without surrendering your inner citadel. You've stood still in the chaos and remembered the power of the silent stare. You stopped explaining your choices because your life, not your words, is your answer. You built resolve where you once had only rage. And now, what remains? What still binds you to the pain? The Stoic path doesn't end with insight, it ends with liberation. The true Stoic doesn't just understand suffering, he walks past it. As Epictetus said, "Don't seek for events to happen as you wish, but wish for events to happen as they do, and your life will go smoothly." In this moment, the test is not whether she betrayed you, it's whether you'll betray yourself by staying enslaved to it. You can rage, you can break things, you can scream into your pillow, replay the text messages, try to trace where the lie began. Or you can breathe, you can rise, you can go quiet. Let the silence be the closing chapter, not a silence of defeat, but of transcendence. Because the one who truly wins is not the one who gets the last word, but the one who no longer needs to speak. No one can take what you refuse to carry. Remember Marcus Aurelius, choose not to be harmed, and you won't be. What does that mean? It means the moment you realize their betrayal has nothing to do with your worth, you're free. It means the dignity isn't stolen, it's surrendered, and you don't have to surrender anything. The Stoics didn't teach avoidance, they taught confrontation without corruption. They taught looking directly at the thing that hurt you, not to destroy it, but to dissolve its power over you. So what's your choice? Will you let this betrayal define you, or will you walk away not as a victim, but as one reborn through restraint? You don't owe anyone vengeance, you don't owe them understanding, you don't even owe them a goodbye. You owe yourself peace. And if that peace costs you silence, distance, and the courage to build a life that makes no excuses, then it's the greatest deal you'll ever make. She may have betrayed your trust, but don't betray your soul by staying in the past. The Stoic warrior doesn't just survive betrayal, he uses it as fuel for his freedom. So here we are, the final moment, not of closure, but of clarity. You know what she said, you know what it means, but now the meaning is yours to write. Let it be the beginning of your empire, not the ruins of your ego. For every moment you chose stillness over spite, silence over shouting, growth over grudges. Subscribe to Chill, then Conquer, where we turn pain into power and wounds into wisdom.